close your eyes for a second. Well, unless you're driving, in which case, please keep them on the road.
Yeah, definitely.
But I want you to just visualize your weekly calendar. Specifically, let's look at, say, a Tuesday afternoon. It's 3:30 p.m. The school bell has just rung.
Oh, boy.
And if you're a parent, or you've ever even seen a parent in the wild, you know what happens next. It's just this logistical game of Tetris.
It really is. A high-stakes game of Tetris where the blocks are children and, the line's never clear.
They never clear, exactly. You've got the piano lesson at 4.0.
Yeah.
You have the math tutor at 5.15. You've got soccer practice, swimming, maybe a coding camp.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in that chaotic mix, usually squeezed between a snack and a meltdown, is martial arts.
Right.
And that is where I want to kind of plant our flag today.
Mm-hmm.
Because for, I'd say 99% of people, martial arts is just activity number 4.
Just another block in the calendar. Yeah.
It's a way to burn off energy, maybe get a participation trophy, and buy mom and dad an hour of silence.
It's viewed as recreation.
But what if that categorization is just fundamentally broken? What if we're looking at it completely wrong? That's the question we're wrestling with today.
Okay.
We're doing a deep dive into a philosophy that argues jiu-jitsu isn't a sport. It's not a hobby. It is, and I'm quoting here, a human necessity.
And that is a heavy phrase, necessity, that implies that without it, you're incomplete.
Right. And to help us unpack this, we have a really fascinating stack of materials. We're pulling from the archives of the Self-Defense Academy, COS, in Colorado Springs, and we have this very dense, very philosophical transcript from episode 25 of the Valente Brothers TV channel.
Mm-hmm.
These are not just guys rolling around on mats. They're really dissecting the why behind it all.
And the Valente brothers are, they're huge in the jiu-jitsu world. But what's interesting about this deep dive is we're not really focusing on their tournament records. We're focusing on their lineage and their whole philosophy of education.
Speaking of lineage, I do want to make a quick correction right up top, because details matter. We're talking about the Valente brothers, Guy, Pedro, and Joaquin.
Right.
And there's often some confusion about who their father was in the jiu-jitsu family tree. Their father is Pedro Valente Sr., not Silvio. And this is just a name check. It's actually crucial to this whole episode.
It is the key to the lock.
Yeah.
Because Pedro Valente Sr. wasn't a cage fighter. He wasn't some bouncer. He was a prominent plastic surgeon.
A surgeon, a man of science, anatomy, and precision.
Exactly. And that background frames everything we're about to talk about. When a surgeon looks at the human body, they don't see a tool for scoring points.
Yeah.
They see a biological machine that needs to survive. So his worldview, that jiu-jitsu is a human necessity, it comes from a place of preservation, not competition.
Okay, so here's the roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to explore why a surgeon would rank fighting right up there with food and water. We're going to unpack a Japanese concept called bunbu ryodo, which might just be the secret to raising a functioning adult. And I promise you, we are going to tell you a story about cutting watermelons that will completely change how you deal with boredom.
Oh, that watermelon story is fantastic. It completely redefines what master even looks like.
It really does.
Yeah.
But let's start with the core conflict. Self-defense versus sport. Because to the average person watching TV, jiu-jitsu is the UFC.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
It's 2 people in a cage. There's a referee. There are rounds. Someone gets their hand raised. But the source material draws this hard, jagged line in the sand between sport and self-defense.
It's a vital distinction. And the Valente brothers and the Self-Defense Academy, they make it really clear. They don't hate sports. They love soccer, basketball. They even enjoy watching competitive martial arts. But they argue the intent is completely different.
Intent is everything.
In a sport, the goal is to win. It's to dominate a specific opponent within a specific time frame governed by rules. If you get tired, the round ends. If you get hurt, the ref steps in. It's a game.
And self-defense?
Self-defense is about survival. It's about not getting hurt. There are no points for almost escaping a mugging. There is no referee on the street.
This brings us back to that phrase, human necessity. I want to push on this a bit.
Okay.
Because I love tennis.
Yeah.
I play every weekend.
Yeah.
But I would never look you in the eye and say, tennis is a human necessity.
Right.
If I can't hit a backhand, I might look silly, but I'm going to survive the day.
Precisely. And the source material uses a great analogy here. They compare it to basketball. Learning to dribble is great for coordination. It's fun. But basketball is not going to teach you what to do if someone tries to punch you in the face.
No.
It won't teach you how to survive a physical threat to your life.
It's Maslow's hierarchy, isn't it?
It is straight out of Maslow. If you look at that pyramid of human needs, right at the bottom you have the physiological stuff. Food, water, air, you can't live without them.
Okay.
But what is sitting right on top of that? Safety, security, self-preservation. The argument from Pedro Valente Sr. and the Academy is that self-defense sits right there on that second rung. It is foundational. If you can't protect your own body from harm, can you really say you are a fully independent human being?
Wow. That's a confronting question.
Yeah.
Because we outsource that, don't we? We outsource it to the police or to the social contract that says people shouldn't hit each other.
We do. But the source argues that's a luxury. True independence means possessing the capability yourself. And this is where the trophy trap comes in.
The trophy trap. This is something the Self-Defense Academy warns parents about specifically.
Yeah. If you treat martial arts like a sport, the goal becomes the trophy, the gold medal, the ribbon. You're training for a specific event. I need to win the tournament in June.
Which is just a dopamine shake.
It is. It's an external reward. And what happens when you lose, or what happens when you get the trophy and the high wears off? The motivation just evaporates. But if the goal is building champions in life, which is the Academy's motto, you aren't training for a tournament. You're training for life. You're building the confidence to navigate the world safely. That goal never expires.
Okay, I'm sold on the philosophy. Human necessity. Building champions. It sounds very noble, but let's bring this down to the kitchen table. Because every parent listening knows that noble philosophy just falls apart when your 7-year-old looks at you with big teary eyes and says, I don't want to go.
The I don't want to go scenario, the parenting boss battle.
It really is. And usually we cave. We say, okay, well, we tried. Maybe it's not your thing. We'll try piano. But the transcript from the Valente brothers takes a very different stance on this.
They do.
They actually challenge the parents to flip the script.
They do. They ask you to imagine that same child comes to you on a Tuesday morning and says, Mom, Dad, I don't want to go to math class today. I'm tired. Division is boring. I don't feel like it.
I would laugh. I'd say, grab your backpack, get in the car.
Right. You wouldn't even hesitate. Why?
Yeah, because math. Well, because math is non-negotiable. You have to learn to count. You have to be literate to function in society. It's not about fun.
Exactly. You view academic education as a survival tool for the modern world. The argument here is that if you truly buy into the philosophy that self-defense is a human necessity, then it is physical education. It's physical literacy. It becomes just as non-negotiable as math.
So when the kid pushes back, it's not because they hate the activity. It's because they sense the parent thinks it's optional.
That's the motivation gap.
Yeah.
Kids are like little radars. They are incredibly perceptive. If they sense that you treat jujitsu like a hobby, like, oh, we can skip practice today to go see a movie, then they'll treat it like a hobby.
And hobbies are for entertainment.
Hobbies are for entertainment. And if I'm not entertained, why should I go?
But if the parent treats it like brushing your teeth, something we just do because it keeps us healthy, the resistance disappears.
Often, yes, it becomes part of the routine. And the source actually mentions a really interesting dynamic. Resistance drops significantly when the whole family trains.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It stops being, you go do your chore while I sit in the car and look at my phone.
Exactly. It becomes, this is what our family does. It's a shared culture. It creates this sense of dependability. The child isn't being sent away to be fixed or trained. They're participating in a family value system.
However, even if you have the best framing in the world, there is one enemy that eventually comes for us all, whether you're 7 or 47.
Oh, yeah.
Boredom.
The silent killer of consistency.
Mom, we did this move last week. Dad, I already know how to fall. The sources call this the repetition problem. And I think this is where the philosophy gets really deep.
This is where we have to talk about the watermelon.
Please. The watermelon story. This is from Grandmaster Helio, one of the founders of this lineage.
Yes. So imagine this. You have Grandmaster Helio. He's a legend. He's perfected this art. And yet every single day he would go into his kitchen with a knife and a watermelon. Every single day.
Now, to an outsider, say a kid used to TikTok or video games, that looks like torture. It looks like the most boring chore imaginable.
It looks like stagnation. Where are you doing the same thing? You already cut the melon yesterday. But Helio wasn't bored. He was obsessed.
Obsessed with what? It's a fruit.
He was obsessed with the microscopic details. He wasn't just hacking it open. He was analyzing the angle of the blade entry. He was feeling the resistance of the rind versus the flesh. He was adjusting the pressure of his wrist by millimeters.
Wow.
He was trying to execute the perfect cut
He was finding an entire universe of depth inside a simple, repetitive action.
That is the definition of mastery, and that is the antidote to boredom. The Valente brothers talk about their Fighting Foundations program. It's very structured. They teach the basics over and over and over.
Which is the opposite of the entertainment model where we constantly need new flashing lights.
Exactly. We're conditioned to seek external novelty. Entertain me. Show me a new move. But the source argues that if you depend on novelty for motivation, you will quit, because eventually the novelty runs out.
But the watermelon.
The watermelon represents internal observation. If you can teach a child or yourself to find motivation within the repetition, to look for those invisible 1% improvements, you become unstoppable.
It's a profound shift. It's not, I have to do this again. It's, I get to try to do this better.
Right. And that applies to everything. If you can embrace the boredom of repetition, you can master coding, you can master piano, you can master surgery. It is the master key to skill acquisition.
I love that. Don't look for the new, look for the depth. That leads us to another concept that the transcript mentions, something written on the wall of their dojo. Bunbo Ryodo.
Bunbo Ryodo. It's a beautiful Japanese concept that really ties all of this together.
Break it down for us. It sounds like a delicious dish, but I know it's philosophy.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So bun refers to the literary arts, the pen, intellectual independence.
Okay.
But refers to the martial arts, the sword, physical independence. And Ryodo implies the dual way, or the way of both.
The pen and the sword. It's a classic pairing.
It is, but the source material really digs into why you need both to be a complete human. They paint two very vivid pictures of what happens when this balance is off.
Okay, give us the first archetype.
First, imagine the pure intellectual, the academic. This person is brilliant. PhD, can solve complex equations, a giant in the world of ideas. But you put them in a physically threatening situation, even just a heated argument over a parking spot where someone gets in their face.
They freeze.
They crumble. Their heart rate spikes to 180. The adrenaline dumps. Their brain just shuts down. Why? Because while they have intellectual competence, they have zero physical confidence. They feel unsafe in their own body.
Their brain in a jar, essentially.
In a way, yeah. Now flip the coin. Imagine the stereotypical meathead fighter, physically dominant, a beast in the gym. They can clear a room, but they can't navigate a complex intellectual challenge. They can't articulate their emotions. They can't control their impulses in a social setting.
They lack academic confidence.
Right. So you have one person who is fragile and one person who is volatile. The goal of Bunbo Ryodo is to close that gap, to create a human being who is formidable in both arenas.
The source had a formula for this, didn't it?
Yes. Competence plus confidence is success. And they make a crucial point. Competence, just having the skill, is useless if you don't have the confidence to use it.
That's a big statement.
Well, think about it. You can be the best writer in the world, but if you're too insecure to show your work to anyone, are you really a writer?
Good point.
You can know 50 ways to escape a headlock, but if you panic and freeze because you lack emotional stability, those skills are gone.
So the goal is to have the physical confidence to stay calm, which allows your intellect to actually function under pressure.
That is the sweet spot. That is Bunbo Ryodo.
And I think that leads us perfectly into the real-world application of all this. Because while we can sit here and talk about Japanese philosophy and watermelons, there are kids out there right now facing a very different reality. The stats on bullying in these sources are, honestly, they're terrifying.
They're staggering. The Self-Defense Academy website cites data that 150,000 children miss school every single day in the United States due to fear of bullying.
150,000. That's not a statistic. That's a medium-sized city staying home every day because they're afraid.
And that's likely a low estimate because the same data suggests that less than 15% of kids actually report the bullying. So what we see is just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, usually when people hear bullying and martial arts in the same sentence, they think, okay, teach the kid to punch the bully in the nose. But the source makes a much more nuanced connection here.
It's not about offensive violence. It's about the signal you broadcast. Bullies are predators. In the animal kingdom, predators don't attack the strongest-looking target. They look for the weak, the insecure, the isolated.
They look for a victim.
Exactly. The argument is that self-defense training stops the psychological trauma before it starts, not because the kid fights, but because the kid projects confidence.
They walk differently. They hold their head up.
They don't vibrate with fear. Like, if a child has that Bunbo Ryodo, that physical independence, they don't look like a victim. The bully scans them, senses that stability, and just moves on. The fight never happens.
There was also a really interesting point in the transcript about roughhousing. It touched on something biological that I think we've forgotten.
Yes, the instinctual necessity for physical play. We live in a very sanitized world now. Zero tolerance policies in schools. No touching. Keep your hands to yourself.
Which sounds good on paper for safety, but
But it ignores biology. Look at puppies. Look at lion cubs. What do? They wrestle. They pin each other. They bite gently.
it's how they learn.
It is. It's called skin hunger or physical literacy. They learn where their body ends and another begins. They learn how much force is too much. By legislating that out of childhood, we are creating kids who are touch-starved and physically illiterate.
They don't know their own strength, or they panic the moment someone touches them.
Exactly. The source argues that kids need to grapple to develop properly. Jiu-jitsu provides a laboratory for that. It's controlled chaos. It lets them satisfy that biological itch in a safe environment, teaching them to handle another person's weight without malice.
It turns violence into play and education.
Correct.
I want to share a story from the transcript that I think perfectly encapsulates this idea of confidence preventing conflict. It's not about a kid, though. It's about a 60-year-old student.
The bar story.
The bar story. I love this because it's so relatable.
It is. So set the scene. You have a successful guy about 60 years old. He's at a high-end bar, nice atmosphere, probably expensive drinks. And out of nowhere, an aggressive, drunk patron just zeroes in on him.
We've all seen this guy, the unpredictable drunk.
Right. He's making demands, telling him to tip the waitress, getting right in his face. He's using expletives. I'm talking to you. That kind of aggressive energy.
Now, this is the moment where biologically most people dump adrenaline. Your hands start to shake, your voice cracks, or you get angry and swing.
The fight-or-flight response hijacks the brain. But this student had been training for about 6 months. Not a lifetime, just 6 months. And instead of freezing like the academic we mentioned or flying into a rage like the fighter, he just stood up.
He didn't assume a fighting stance. He didn't put his fist up.
No, he stood up. He put his hands up in a defensive but non-violent posture, open palms, the universal sign for calm down. He maintained his distance so the guy couldn't sucker punch him, and he verbally de-escalated. He looked the guy in the eye and said, "Sir, please stay away. Don't get too close."
He set a boundary.
He set a boundary with conviction, and here's the magic. The drunk guy hesitated. He sensed that this 60-year-old man wasn't afraid. He wasn't aggressive, but he wasn't prey. The moment passed, other people stepped in, and the fight never happened.
And the student told his instructor later that it was the biggest win of his life.
He called it priceless. And notice, the win wasn't knocking the guy out. The win was the feeling. He said he didn't panic. He knew that if it went physical, he had a plan. And because he knew he had a plan, he didn't need to use it.
That is the ultimate example of Bunbu Ryodo. The sword was sharp, so it could stay in the sheath. And because the sword was in the sheath, he could use the pen, his words, to solve the problem.
It's the paradox of martial arts. You learn to fight so that you never have to fight.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just synthesize what we've uncovered. We started with a calendar full of activities, soccer, piano, math, and we asked, where does martial arts fit?
And I think the sources make a compelling case that if you care about raising a complete, resilient human being, or becoming one yourself, it doesn't fit in the hobby box. It fits in the necessity box.
Yeah.
It provides the physical independence that mirrors the intellectual independence we get from school.
We also briefly touched on the 753 code at the top of the show. We didn't dig too deep into the numbers, but the sources frame it as the ethical framework. It's the code of nonviolent resolution and integrity. But as we learned, you can't run high-end software on broken hardware. You need the physical capability to back up your ethics.
Well put. Being peaceful is a choice. If you are harmless because you are weak, you aren't peaceful. You're just helpless. Strength allows you to choose peace.
The sources gave us a thought of the moment that I think is the perfect way to close out the philosophy. Don't go through life, grow through life.
It's short, but it really packs a punch. It asks you, are you just marking time? Are you just playing Tetris with your schedule, trying to fit it all in? Or are you evolving? Are you cutting the watermelon with intent?
That's the question. And I have one final, slightly provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your Tuesday. We live in a very comfortable society. We have 9/11. We have locks on our doors. We have a social contract.
Right.
But the sources ask us to look past that illusion of safety.
It's a fragile layer.
So ask yourself, do you have a Bunbu Ryodo balance? If the power went out for a week, or if the police were 20 minutes away, or if you were alone in that bar with the drunk guy, would you have physical independence? Or have you neglected that part of your humanity because you're relying solely on the safety of the modern world?
It's a heavy question, but one worth wrestling with.
It certainly is. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Take care.